All right, welcome back. We're going to pick up this question. So big arc minus the little arc, so that's RT, divided by 2 has to equal this angle out here, the measure of angle U. Okay, so we just called the measure of angle U X, which is fine. The big arc is 118. The little arc is 90, and we're just going to divide by 2. So I get 28, divide by 2, 14. Now you can double check that. Is 18 minus 90 divided by 2, 118 minus 90 divided by 2, is that in fact 14? Yep, I double checked it. Okay, now it says find AB. So I'm back to segments. See how I'm not doing arcs and angles? So we did this question in class, and we decided that it has a tangent and it has a secant. And so we said this is like question 13 on our reference sheet. So if we look at it, again, the formula is PV, the part on the outside, times PC, the whole thing. So we say the whole thing times the part on the outside, the whole thing times the part on the outside. The part on the outside, though, is the whole thing. So we can use the same formula we used for all of them. The whole thing times the part on the outside is equal to the whole thing times the part on the outside. Okay? It just has a special meaning when we have a tangent line. So they'd like us to find AB, so I'm going to call that X. The whole thing here, AD, the whole thing is 13, and the part on the outside is also 13. The whole secant line is X plus 6. The part on just the outside is X. So we notice this, when we distribute this X, we get that. Right? And so now we're reminded of this quadratic equation. I have an x squared and an x, and so in order to solve for x, I'm going to get, not always, but most of the time I get 2 answers. One's probably going to be positive, one's negative, and we're going to ignore the negative because the length of a segment should be positive. Okay, so when we look here, we know A is 1, B is 6, and C is a negative 169. Okay, so now using the quadratic formula, we can actually solve for that. I also asked that you solve for the one in class. So that one was very similar. I just have slightly different A, B, and C. So on another piece of paper, and you can use a quadratic equation calculator since you're home. You can literally Google quadratic equation. The formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You will have this formula in every math class you take, so it is very important that you memorize it. I will provide it on the test. So, question 9a, the one we're doing here in homework, we ended up getting a is 1, B is 6, C is negative 169. All right, the one we did in class that I told you to continue at home on your own, we got A is 1, B is 8, and C is negative 225. Okay. So I would suggest pausing the tape, trying to do it on your own, and or finding a quadratic calculator online, testing that out, and then replaying the tape to see how you did. Okay, so we have negative b, so that would be negative 6 plus or minus b squared, so that would be 36, 6 times 6, minus 4 times a is 1, and c is a negative 169. Now I would suggest putting the negative way high in the air because it's not subtracting, we're multiplying by negatives. And then we have it all over 2 times a, so 2 times 1. Now recopying the problem, we still have 36, but a lot of times this happens where I have -4, or I'm subtracting 4 times a negative. And that means when you subtract a negative, you add. Okay, so then you have 4 times 1 times 169. Okay, so to clean that up a little bit, that's what I got. And 2 times 1 would be 2. Copying the problem down again, we then want to do what's inside here. So this is like a parentheses. So you've got to do that first. So when I add those two together, I get 7/12 all over 2. Okay. And so now I'm going to square that, and I get a decimal. Okay, so that's my answer. And this is a quadratic equation. So what it is actually a graph of a U. And what you're really trying to find is where does it cross the x-axis. And oftentimes, if this is the x and the y-axis, oftentimes you'll get a -1 and a positive. In geometry, we're concerned with the positive number because we're solving for a missing length. It should be a positive number. So setting this up, though, we have a -6 plus 26.683 all divided by 2. And I have a -6 minus 26.683 divided by 2. So this one's going to be negative. So notice I'm not really interested in this, just specific to this class. I'm not interested in what that root is. I want to know what that root one is. Okay, now we have that. So there's our decimal, and you want to add it to -6. So we get 20.683 ... all over 2. And so when we divide by 2, we get 10, and it says round to the nearest tenth, so 10.3. Good job. Now again, you can go back here and test this for reasonableness. So if this is in fact 10.3, then 13 times 13, which we know is 169, should be pretty close to the whole thing times the part on the outside. So the whole thing would be 16.3, right? 6 plus 10.3 times the part on the outside, 10.3. So just double checking our answer. All right, that's 167.89. Notice that's pretty darn close. So the reason why it's not exactly 169 is that we rounded, right? We rounded there. So yes, those are close enough. That was a good check. That was our answer. Now let's do the one from class. So same exact formula. Again, I'd pause the video, try to solve it, and see if you come up with the same answer I do. Okay, so the formula says -b, so now this time b is 8, so that'd be -8 plus or minus, and b squared. Well, 8 times 8 is 64, minus 4 times a times c. Put that way up high. All over 2 times a, and a is 1. So using this formula, we're going to do it just like the last one, rewriting it. This happened again. We have a negative times a negative, and then that's like adding. So 4 times 225 is 900. All over 2 times 1, which is 2. So rewriting this, we have 964, the square root of that. Awesome. So at this point, we're going to figure out what that number is. So 964. Take the square root, we get a decimal, which we actually thought we would because it said round to the nearest, so we're assuming we're going to get a decimal. So I've got to go on 2 paths. I have -8 plus a 31.0483 all over the number 2, and then I'm going to have -8 minus a 31.0483 all over 2. And we know from experience that we're looking for the positive one because we're solving for a missing length. Okay, So now with that in my calculator, I need to add it to -8. And I get 23. When I divide that by 2, and we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So that number 2 would tell me to keep that the same. So we get x is equal to 11.5. There we go. Thank you for joining us. I think that is a job well done. Good luck.